The gunshot still echoed in Rebecca Kingston's ears as she stumbled through the darkness, her dress catching on thorns and branches that tore the fabric like paper. She had run for what felt like hours, her lungs burning, her feet bleeding through her worn shoes, and when she finally collapsed against a wooden fence post just outside town, she could not stop shaking. The night air in Stockton, California, carried the scent of dust and distant cattle, and somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled. She wrapped her arms around herself, but the torn calico dress offered no protection against the November chill of 1878, and the trembling that racked her body came from something far deeper than cold. The sound of hoofbeats made her press herself lower against the fence, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. But the rider who appeared in the moonlight wore no badge, carried no torch, and when he saw her huddled there in the shadows, he simply dismounted without a word. Benjamin Quinn had been riding back from checking his family's northern pasture when he spotted the figure, and in the pale light, he could see enough to know that whatever had happened, this woman needed help more than she needed questions. He shrugged out of his heavy coat, the sheepskin lining still warm from his body heat, and draped it around her shoulders. She flinched at the contact, and he stepped back immediately, giving her space. His dark eyes took in the torn dress, the scratches on her arms, the way she held herself like something broken, and he made a decision that would change both their lives. Without asking a single question about what she was running from or who might be following, he simply said, "My horse can carry double. I have a place not far from here where you will be safe." Rebecca looked up at him then, really looked at him. He was perhaps 25 years old, with sun-darkened skin and calloused hands that spoke of hard work rather than violence. His face held an honest quality that she had learned not to trust, but desperation makes gamblers of us all, and she was fresh out of choices. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and allowed him to help her to her feet. His touch was gentle, careful, and when he lifted her onto his horse, he made sure the coat stayed wrapped around her before mounting behind her. They rode in silence through the outskirts of Stockton, past the scattered homesteads and into an area where the land opened up into rolling hills. Benjamin's family ranch sat nestled in a valley, and he guided the horse not toward the main house, but to a smaller cabin that stood separate from the other buildings. It had been his grandfather's place before the old man passed 2 years back, and Benjamin had been fixing it up slowly, thinking vaguely that someday he might want a home of his own apart from his parents and younger siblings. Inside, he lit a lamp and stirred the embers in the fireplace back to life, adding wood until warmth began to fill the single room. Rebecca stood just inside the doorway, still wrapped in his coat, still shaking. Benjamin moved around the cabin with quiet efficiency, pumping water into a kettle and setting it on the stove, pulling blankets from a chest, never once asking her to explain. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and steady. "There is a bed in the corner. You should rest. No one will bother you here, and I will be just outside if you need anything." "Wait," Rebecca managed, her voice hoarse from running and fear and the tears she had not yet allowed herself to shed. "Why are you helping me? You do not even know who I am." Benjamin paused at the door, his hand on the frame. "I know you are scared. I know someone hurt you. That is all I need to know tonight. The rest can keep until morning if you want to tell it then, or not at all. That is your choice." He left before she could respond, closing the door softly behind him. Rebecca stood in the warm cabin, surrounded by the evidence of a life built on honest labor, shelves lined with books and tools and simple household things, and for the first time in hours, she let herself breathe. The shaking continued, but she managed to pour the hot water into a basin and wash the worst of the dirt and blood from her hands and face. The bed was narrow but clean, and when she finally lay down beneath the quilts, she pulled Benjamin's coat over her like an extra blanket and let the tears come at last. Outside, Benjamin settled onto the porch with his own blanket and his rifle across his lap. He was not expecting trouble, but he had learned young that expecting and preparing were two different things. The November night was cold, and he could see his breath in the air, but he had spent plenty of nights under worse conditions during cattle drives. If that woman inside needed to feel safe, then he would make sure she was safe. Simple as that. Morning came slowly, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Benjamin had dozed on and off through the night, and when the door to the cabin opened, he was instantly awake. Rebecca stood in the doorway, still wearing his coat over her torn dress, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders. She was younger than he had thought in the darkness, perhaps 21 or 22, with hazel eyes that held both fear and a fierce determination. "I should tell you," she said without preamble. "I should tell you what happened so you know what you are risking by helping me." Benjamin stood, stretching the stiffness from his muscles. "Come inside. I will make breakfast and you can tell me whatever you want to tell me." They worked together in an oddly comfortable silence, Benjamin frying eggs and bacon while Rebecca sliced bread and set the small table. It reminded him of working alongside his mother in the main house kitchen, that easy cooperation that came from shared purpose. When they finally sat down to eat, Rebecca wrapped her hands around a cup of coffee and began to speak. "My father owns a saloon in town," she said. "The Golden Eagle, maybe you know it." Benjamin nodded. Everyone in Stockton knew the Golden Eagle. "He is not a good man. He never has been. My mother died when I was 12, and since then, I have worked in the saloon, serving drinks, keeping the books. It was not the life I wanted, but it was the life I had." She paused, taking a sip of coffee, and Benjamin waited. He had learned patience working with horses and cattle, and he sensed that pushing her would only make this harder. 3 months ago, a man came to Stockton. His name is Marcus Delaney, and he owns property throughout the valley. He is rich and powerful, and when he decided he wanted to marry me, my father agreed without asking what I wanted. I refused, of course, but Delaney is not a man who accepts refusal. Last night, he and my father tried to force the issue. They had a preacher there, ready to perform the ceremony whether I consented or not. Rebecca's hands trembled and she set the cup down carefully. I fought. I screamed. But my father held me while Delaney tore my dress, said he would make me his wife one way or another. They did not expect me to have a knife in my boot. I got it away from Delaney and fired a warning shot with his own gun. In the confusion, I ran. I just ran and kept running until I could not run anymore. Benjamin felt a cold anger settle in his chest, the kind that burned slow and deep. "They will be looking for you." "Yes." Rebecca met his eyes. "They will, and when they find me, they will drag me back or worse. That is why I should not stay here. I should not involve you in this. I just needed one night to rest, to think of where I could go." "Where would you go?" Benjamin asked practically. "How far do you think you would get on foot with no money and every man in the county knowing Marcus Delaney is looking for you?" Rebecca's jaw tightened. "I do not know, but I will not be trapped again. I would rather die free than live as that man's property." Benjamin was quiet for a moment, thinking through options and possibilities. Finally, he said, "Stay here, at least for a few days. Give yourself time to heal and plan. This cabin is far enough from the main house that my family will not bother you, and I can bring you food and anything else you need. Delaney and your father will be searching the roads and the stage stations, not private property 5 miles outside town. Why would you do this?" Rebecca asked, her voice breaking slightly. "You do not know me. You owe me nothing, and if they find out you helped me, they could come after you too." Benjamin stood and began clearing the dishes, his movements deliberate. "My grandfather used to say that a man's character is defined by what he does when no one is watching and there is no reward. You needed help. I could give it. That is reason enough." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his chest shifted. "Besides, I have never had much use for men who think they can force a woman into anything. Delaney and your father can search all they want. They will not find you here." Over the next few days, an unexpected routine developed. Benjamin would arrive each morning with fresh water and food, sometimes breakfast already prepared, other times ingredients for Rebecca to cook if she felt inclined. He brought her a dress that had belonged to his sister Emily, who had married and moved to Sacramento the previous year, along with proper undergarments and a warm shawl. Rebecca accepted these gifts with a gratitude that went beyond words, and slowly, the haunted look in her eyes began to fade. They talked during those morning visits, conversations that started practical and grew personal. Benjamin told her about the ranch, how his grandfather had claimed this land in 1849 during the gold rush, how the family had built it from nothing into a profitable cattle operation. He spoke of his younger brothers, Jack and Henry, who were still learning the business, and his sister Sarah, who was 16 and wanted to be a teacher. He talked about the feel of a good horse beneath him, the satisfaction of fixing something broken, the way the valley looked when spring came and everything turned green. Rebecca shared her own stories more carefully, as if testing which memories were safe to revisit. She told him about her mother, who had loved books and taught Rebecca to read before she started school, about sneaking novels from the town library and reading by candlelight after the saloon closed, about dreams she had buried so deep she had almost forgotten them, dreams of someday having a home that was truly her own, where no one shouted or drank themselves mean or made her feel like she was less than human. "I used to imagine leaving," she admitted one morning as they sat on the porch watching the sun climb higher. "Just walking away from Stockton and starting over somewhere no one knew me. But I had no money, no skills beyond keeping books and pouring whiskey. Women alone do not last long out here." "You have more strength than you know," Benjamin said quietly. "You survived in that saloon for years. You fought your way free when you had to. That takes steel." Rebecca turned to look at him, and something in her expression made Benjamin's heart beat faster. "You have been very kind to me. Kinder than anyone has been in longer than I can remember. I do not know how to repay that." "You do not owe me anything," Benjamin said firmly. "But if you want to stay here, work on the ranch once things settle down, learn ranching instead of saloon keeping, there would be a place for you. We can always use another hand, and my mother has been saying she needs help with the household accounts. She would appreciate someone with your skills." It was an offer made partly from kindness and partly from something else, something Benjamin was not quite ready to name. In the few days since he had found Rebecca broken and terrified by the fence line, he had come to look forward to their morning talks with an eagerness that surprised him. She was smart and funny when she let her guard down, with a sharp wit that had been honed by years of verbal sparring with drunk cowboys and card players. More than that, she had a resilience that he admired, a refusal to let what had happened to her define what she would become. Rebecca considered his offer carefully. "What about Delaney and my father? They will not stop looking." "Then we will deal with that when it comes," Benjamin said, "but you should not have to spend your whole life running from fear. At some point, you get to choose to stand and fight for the life you want." That afternoon, Benjamin brought his mother to meet Rebecca. Martha Quinn was a sturdy woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at Rebecca in Emily's borrowed dress and seemed to understand the entire situation without needing it explained. Instead of prying or judging, she simply said, "My son tells me you are good with numbers and accounts. Is that true?" "Yes, madam," Rebecca said, surprised by the direct approach. "I have been keeping books for my father's business since I was 14. Martha nodded briskly. "Good. I have been managing the ranch accounts, but my eyesight is not what it was, and honestly, I have better things to do with my time. If you are willing to work, you can earn your keep and then some. We have a room in the main house, or you can stay here in the cabin if you prefer privacy. Either way, you would be part of the household, not a servant. Is that clear?" Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. "Why are you being so generous? You do not even know me." Martha's expression softened. "I know my son's judgment and I trust it. I also know what it is like to need help and not know where to find it. When I first came west with my husband, we had nothing. People helped us then. This is how it works out here. We help each other, or we do not survive." Over the following weeks, Rebecca settled into life on the Quinn ranch. She moved into the cabin rather than the main house, treasuring the privacy and independence it offered. Each morning, she would walk to the main house for breakfast and spend the day working on accounts, helping Martha with household tasks, and slowly learning the rhythms of ranch life. Benjamin taught her to ride properly, starting with the gentlest mare in the stable and working up to longer rides around the property. "You need to know the land," he explained one crisp December morning as they rode along the northern fence line. "Every hill and creek, every place where the land changes. That way you are never lost." Rebecca guided her horse alongside his, feeling the wind in her hair and the sun on her face. "I have lived in Stockton my whole life, but I have never really seen this valley before. It is beautiful." Benjamin watched her face light up with genuine pleasure, and that unnamed feeling in his chest grew stronger. He found himself looking for excuses to spend time with her, teaching her things she did not strictly need to know, like how to throw a lasso and mend fence wire, and tell if a cow was about to calve. Rebecca seemed to sense what he was doing, and she never called him out on it. Instead, she leaned into those moments, laughing when she failed spectacularly at roping fence posts and celebrating her small victories with an enthusiasm that made him smile. It was during one of those riding lessons that trouble finally found them. They were walking their horses back toward the barn when 3 riders appeared on the road leading to the ranch. Benjamin recognized Marcus Delaney immediately, flanked by 2 of his hired men. His hand moved instinctively to the rifle in his saddle holster, but Rebecca touched his arm. "Let me handle this," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear Benjamin could see in her eyes. "I will not let you get hurt because of me." But Benjamin shook his head. "We handle this together. Just stay close." They rode forward to meet the men at the property gate. Delaney was a tall man in his 40s with cold eyes and a mouth that knew how to smile without meaning it. He looked at Rebecca with a possessive hunger that made Benjamin want to knock him off his horse. "Miss Kingston," Delaney said, his voice deceptively pleasant. "You have led us on quite a chase. Your father has been worried sick." "My father sold me like cattle," Rebecca said flatly. "He does not get to claim worry now." Delaney's smile hardened. "You are confused, my dear, understandably upset, but this has gone on long enough. Come back to town with me now, and we will forget this unfortunate episode ever happened." "No," Rebecca said simply. "I am not going anywhere with you." One of Delaney's men moved his horse forward, but Benjamin guided his own mount between them, the rifle now very visible across his saddle. "The lady said no. I suggest you respect that and move along. Delaney's eyes flicked to Benjamin, assessing and dismissive. "This does not concern you, boy. This is between me and my intended bride." "I am not your intended anything," Rebecca said, her voice rising. "I never agreed to marry you. My father had no right to promise what was not his to give." "Your father has every right," Delaney said coldly. "You are his daughter, and until you marry, you are his responsibility and under his authority. The law is clear on that." Benjamin felt Rebecca tense beside him, but before he could speak, Martha's voice cut across the yard. She had emerged from the house with Benjamin's father, Thomas, and both his brothers. All four of them were armed, and they arranged themselves in a clear line of support. "The law is also clear about trespassing," Martha called out. "This is private property, Mr. Delaney, and you were not invited. I suggest you and your men leave before we have a problem." Thomas Quinn stepped forward, a weathered man in his 60s who still moved with the confidence of someone who had built something lasting from nothing. "My wife is right. Whatever dispute you have with Miss Kingston can be addressed through proper legal channels if necessary. But you will not come onto my land making threats and demands." Delaney looked at the assembled family, clearly calculating his options. He was powerful in Stockton, but out here, miles from town on private property with witnesses who would not be easily intimidated or bought, he was at a disadvantage. Finally, he forced his smile back into place. "Very well. But this is not over, Miss Kingston. Your father has legal rights, and I have a contract signed by him promising your hand in marriage. I will pursue this through the courts if necessary." "You do that," Rebecca said, her voice stronger now with the Quinn family at her back. "And I will tell the judge exactly what you and my father tried to do, and let the law sort out whether a woman can be forced into marriage against her will in 1878. Delaney's expression darkened, but he wheeled his horse around without another word. His men followed, and they rode back toward town at a gallop, leaving dust hanging in the December air. Rebecca sagged slightly in her saddle, and Benjamin reached over to steady her. "You did well," he said softly. "That took courage." "I was terrified," she admitted, "but I meant what I said. I will not go back. Whatever happens, I will not be his property." That evening, the entire Quinn family gathered in the main house to discuss the situation. Thomas poured coffee while Martha set out pie, and they all sat around the large dining table that had hosted family meals and important decisions for nearly 30 years. "Delaney will push this," Thomas said bluntly. "He is not the type to let go of something he wants, especially when he has been publicly defied. The question is, what legal standing does he actually have?" "A contract with my father means nothing if I do not consent," Rebecca said. "At least, that is what I believe. But I do not know the law well enough to be certain." Benjamin's younger brother Jack, who was 19 and had been studying law books with the vague idea of becoming a judge someday, spoke up. "Actually, California law on this is fairly progressive compared to other states. A woman cannot be forced into marriage against her will, regardless of parental consent. The problem is proving that you did not consent and that force was involved." "I can testify to the state I found her in," Benjamin said. "Torn dress, terrified, running for her life." "That is evidence of something." "It is," Jack agreed. "But it is also your word against Delaney's and her father's. They will claim she consented and then got cold feet, had some kind of female hysteria, and ran off. Without other witnesses to what actually happened that night, it becomes a question of who the judge believes." Rebecca's hands clenched into fists on the table. "So he might get away with it. He might be able to force me back." "Not if you were married to someone else," Sarah said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at the 16-year-old, who flushed but continued. "I mean, if you were already married, then Delaney's contract would be void, right? He cannot claim you as his intended bride if you are someone else's wife. The table went silent as everyone processed this. Benjamin felt his heart start to race, and he carefully did not look at Rebecca. But Martha, with a mother's intuition for these things, watched them both with a considering expression. "That is actually not a bad idea," Jack said slowly. "If Rebecca were to marry someone else of her own free will, with proper witnesses and documentation, it would completely undermine any claim Delaney has. But it would have to be someone willing to take on that kind of fight," Thomas pointed out. "Delaney will not take it well, and neither will Kingston. There could be real trouble." Benjamin finally looked at Rebecca and found her already watching him. In her eyes he saw fear and hope and something else, something that matched the feeling that had been growing in his own chest for weeks now. He took a breath and spoke before he could overthink it. "I will do it," he said quietly. "If Rebecca is willing, I will marry her. Not just to protect her from Delaney, but because I want to." He turned to face her fully. "I know this is fast, and I know it is not how anyone dreams of being proposed to. But these past few weeks, getting to know you, talking with you, teaching you to ride and watching you laugh when the rope tangles or argue with me about the best way to organize account books, I have come to care for you, deeply. If you will have me, I would be honored to call you my wife." Rebecca stared at him, her eyes wide and shining with unshed tears. "Benjamin, you do not have to do this. You should not have to marry someone to protect them from a bad situation. That is not fair to you." "I am not doing this just to protect you," Benjamin said firmly. "Though I would do that anyway, married or not. I am asking you to marry me because I want a life with you. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are there. I want to keep teaching you to ride and learning about books from you and arguing about whether coffee should be strong enough to float a horseshoe." That got a surprised laugh from her, and he smiled. "I know it is fast. I know we are still learning each other. But out here, you do not always get the luxury of long courtships. Sometimes you have to trust what you feel and take a chance." Martha reached over and took Thomas's hand, and Benjamin realized his parents were both smiling. They had known each other only 2 months before marrying, and they had built a lifetime together on that initial leap of faith. Rebecca wiped at her eyes. "I care for you too," she said softly. "More than I thought possible in such a short time. You have shown me kindness when I had forgotten what that felt like. You have made me laugh and feel safe and believe that maybe I could have a different life than the one I thought was inevitable. But I do not want you to feel obligated or to tie yourself to my problems." "You are not a problem to be solved," Benjamin said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You are a person I admire and respect and am falling in love with. Say yes, Rebecca. Marry me and we will face whatever comes together." She looked at their joined hands, then at the family around the table who had welcomed her without hesitation, then back at Benjamin's earnest face. Finally, she smiled through her tears and nodded. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." The wedding took place 3 days later in the Stockton courthouse, arranged quickly but legally. Benjamin wore his best suit, and Rebecca wore a simple blue dress that Martha had helped her sew. The Quinn family attended as witnesses, along with Judge Harrison Carter, who had known Thomas Quinn for 20 years and had no love for men like Marcus Delaney, who threw their weight around. Judge Carter performed the ceremony with proper solemnity, but Benjamin barely heard the words. He was too focused on Rebecca's face, on the way she looked at him with trust and affection, and the beginning of something deeper. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Benjamin kissed her gently, mindful of the fact that this was all still new, and she had been through trauma that would take time to fully heal. But Rebecca surprised him by kissing him back with genuine warmth, and when they pulled apart, she was smiling. "Hello, husband," she said softly. "Hello, wife," Benjamin replied, and felt something settle into place in his chest, like a piece of himself he had not known was missing had finally come home. They filed the marriage certificate immediately, and Judge Carter made sure it was properly witnessed and recorded. By that evening, word had spread through Stockton that Rebecca Kingston had married Benjamin Quinn. Marcus Delaney received the news in his study, and according to reports, destroyed a very expensive bottle of whiskey in his rage. Rebecca's father appeared at the ranch the next day, drunk and belligerent, demanding to see his daughter. Thomas and Benjamin met him at the property gate with rifles and a simple message. Rebecca was married now, beyond his authority, and if he came onto Quinn land again, he would be arrested for trespassing. Kingston left, cursing them all, but he left, and he did not return. The first weeks of marriage were an adjustment for both of them. Benjamin had been living in the cabin on and off while fixing it up, but now it became their true home. They worked together to make it more comfortable, adding curtains that Rebecca sewed and extra shelves for the growing collection of books Benjamin had started buying for her in town. At night, they lay together in the narrow bed, talking in the darkness about everything and nothing, learning the shape of each other's thoughts. Benjamin was patient with the physical aspects of marriage, letting Rebecca set the pace. She had been through trauma, and he would not rush her or push for anything she was not ready to give. But Rebecca surprised him again by being the one to initiate, reaching for him one night with tentative hands and a question in her eyes. He answered with gentle care, showing her that intimacy could be something warm and wanted rather than forced and frightening. They came together slowly, learning each other's bodies with the same careful attention they had given to learning each other's minds. And afterward, Rebecca cried in his arms, but this time from relief and joy and the overwhelming feeling of being truly safe. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "I did not think I could ever feel this way, but I love you." Benjamin held her close, his heart full. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you that first morning when you were so determined to tell me the truth, even though you were terrified. You have never been anything less than brave, Rebecca Quinn." She laughed, and he loved that he could make her laugh, that she felt safe enough with him to let joy replace fear. They fell asleep tangled together, and when morning came, they woke to their first day as a truly married couple, not just in legal fact but in emotional truth. The winter of 1878 passed into spring, and life on the ranch took on new patterns. Rebecca proved to be a natural with the accounts, organizing the ranch finances with a skill that freed up time for other projects. She also discovered an unexpected talent for working with the horses, particularly the young ones that needed gentle handling. Benjamin taught her everything he knew about ranching, and she soaked it up with the eagerness of someone finally learning things that mattered to her. In town, Delaney and Kingston made some efforts to cause trouble, spreading rumors and making vague legal threats. But with the marriage certificate properly filed and Judge Carter backing its legitimacy, there was little they could actually do. Eventually, Kingston left Stockton entirely, selling the Golden Eagle and disappearing into obscurity. Delaney remained, still powerful and wealthy, but he stayed away from the Quinn ranch and from Rebecca. He had lost, and everyone knew it. By summer, Rebecca was fully integrated into the community as Benjamin Quinn's wife. The women who had once looked at her with pity when she served them drinks in her father's saloon now welcomed her to church socials and quilting bees. She made genuine friends for the first time in her life, women who valued her for herself rather than judging her for her father's business. And every evening, she came home to the cabin and to Benjamin, and felt grateful in a way that sometimes overwhelmed her. "I never thought I could have this," she told him one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the valley. "A home that is really mine, a husband who loves me, a family that accepts me. It feels like a dream I am afraid to wake from." Benjamin pulled her close, his arm around her shoulders. "It is not a dream. It is your life, and you earned every bit of it by refusing to give up when it would have been easier to surrender. I am proud of you, Rebecca. Every single day, I am proud to be your husband." She turned to kiss him, and he met her with the warmth that had become as natural as breathing. They had built something real together in the months since that November night when he had found her broken and terrified by the fence line. Not just a marriage of convenience or protection, but a true partnership based on mutual respect and growing love. In October of 1879, nearly a year after their wedding, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant. She told Benjamin one morning over breakfast, watching his face carefully for his reaction. He went very still for a moment, processing, and then a smile broke across his face like sunrise. "Really, we are going to have a baby?" "Yes," Rebecca said, laughing at his obvious joy. "Sometime in the spring, according to the doctor. Are you happy?" "Happy." Benjamin stood and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around carefully. "I am thrilled. I am terrified. I am every feeling at once. We are going to be parents, Rebecca. We are going to have a child together." She held on to him, feeling the strength in his arms and the steady beat of his heart against hers. "I am scared," she admitted quietly. "I do not know how to be a mother. My own mother died so long ago, and I do not have her example to follow." Benjamin set her down gently and cupped her face in his hands. "You are going to be an amazing mother. You are kind and strong and patient, and our child will be lucky to have you. And you are not alone in this. We will figure it out together, the way we have figured out everything else." Martha was equally thrilled by the news, immediately taking Rebecca under her wing with advice and hand-me-down baby clothes and endless stories of her own pregnancies. The whole Quinn family rallied around the expecting couple, and Rebecca found herself surrounded by support in a way that made her previous life seem like it had happened to someone else entirely. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter. Benjamin was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worrying that Rebecca was working too hard or lifting too much. She found it endearing and exasperating in equal measure, but she never doubted that his concern came from genuine love and care. They spent the long winter evenings preparing for the baby, Benjamin building a beautiful cradle from oak wood while Rebecca sewed tiny clothes and blankets. In April of 1880, on a morning when the valley was green with new growth and wildflowers dotted the hillsides, Rebecca went into labor. Benjamin paced outside while Martha and a midwife from town attended to Rebecca inside. The labor was long and difficult, and Benjamin wore a path in the ground with his worrying. But finally, as the sun began to set, he heard the sound he had been waiting for, the strong, angry cry of a newborn baby. Martha emerged from the cabin, tired but smiling. "You have a son," she said simply, "and Rebecca is asking for you." Benjamin rushed inside to find Rebecca propped up in their bed, exhausted and sweaty and absolutely radiant. In her arms, wrapped in one of the blankets she had made, was the smallest human being Benjamin had ever seen. He approached slowly, awed by the tiny life they had created. "Benjamin," Rebecca said softly, her voice hoarse but happy. "Meet your son." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed and looked down at the baby's scrunched red face. Tiny fingers curled and uncurled, and as he watched, the baby's eyes opened briefly, showing dark blue that might change later. Benjamin felt something crack open in his chest, a love so immediate and overwhelming that it nearly knocked him breathless. "He is perfect," Benjamin whispered. "You did so well, Rebecca. I am so proud of you." They named him William Thomas Quinn after Benjamin's father and grandfather. William grew quickly, thriving under the attention of his parents and extended family. Benjamin discovered that fatherhood suited him, that the patience he had developed with horses and cattle translated well to caring for an infant. He would walk the floor with William at night when the baby was fussy, singing old cowboy songs in his low voice until William settled. Rebecca watched them together and felt her heart overflow with love for both of them. Life settled into new rhythms again, this time built around the needs of a growing baby. Rebecca discovered that she loved being a mother, despite her fears. William was an easy baby, quick to smile and curious about everything. As he grew into a toddler, he followed Benjamin around the ranch, imitating everything his father did with the serious concentration of the very young. Benjamin taught him to be gentle with the animals, to respect the land, to work hard but find joy in the work. In 1882, Rebecca gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Rose Martha Quinn. She had Rebecca's hazel eyes and Benjamin's dark hair, and from the beginning, she was fierce and independent. William was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to help care for her. The cabin was bursting at the seams now with 2 children, so Benjamin and his father spent that summer building an addition, creating more bedrooms and a larger living space. The years rolled by with the steady rhythm of ranch life. William and Rose grew, joined in 1885 by another son they named Samuel. The ranch prospered under Thomas's leadership and Benjamin's steady work, and Rebecca's skill with the accounts helped them weather economic downturns that bankrupted other operations. The family became a fixture in Stockton, respected and well-liked, with no one remembering anymore that Rebecca had once been the saloon keeper's daughter running from a forced marriage. Marcus Delaney, in a twist of fate that Rebecca could only see as justice, lost most of his fortune in a bad business deal in 1886 and left California entirely. Her father had died sometime in the intervening years, alone and unmourned. Rebecca felt nothing when she heard the news, no grief or vindication, just a sense of a door closing on a part of her life that no longer had any power over her. In 1890, 12 years after that November night when everything changed, Rebecca and Benjamin stood together on the porch of their expanded home, watching their 3 children play in the yard. William was 11 now, already showing signs of the man he would become, responsible and kind like his father. Rose was 8, sharp as a tack and determined to do everything her brothers could do. Samuel was 5, the baby of the family, cheerful and affectionate. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Rebecca asked, leaning into Benjamin's side. "If you had ridden past that night instead of stopping, if you had asked questions instead of just helping." Benjamin wrapped his arm around her waist, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over the years. "I think about it sometimes, but then I look at this, at what we built together, and I know that everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. We found each other when we both needed it most, and we made something beautiful from it." Rebecca looked up at him. This man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved, who had given her not just protection but love and partnership and a life beyond her wildest dreams. "I love you, Benjamin Quinn. I have loved you almost from that first morning when you made me breakfast and told me I could tell you everything or nothing, that the choice was mine. You gave me back my choices, my freedom, myself, and then you loved all of it." Benjamin kissed her, slow and sweet, the kind of kiss that came from years of intimacy and trust. I love you too, Rebecca Quinn. Thank you for saying yes that day, for taking a chance on a cowboy with more heart than sense. You had plenty of sense, Rebecca said, laughing. And more heart than any man I have ever known. Our children are lucky to have you as a father. I am lucky to have you as a husband. They stood together in the fading light, watching their children and the land stretching out before them, the valley green and gold in the spring evening. The cabin where Benjamin had first brought Rebecca that terrified November night still stood, though they used it now as storage and a guest house when family visited. Sometimes Rebecca would go there and remember that girl she had been, broken and scared and certain her life was over. She would touch the walls and feel grateful for the journey that had brought her here, to this moment, to this life. As the sun set over the California Valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the Quinn family went inside together for dinner. The table was loud with children's chatter and laughter, with the easy comfort of people who knew they were loved and safe. Benjamin caught Rebecca's eye across the table and smiled, and she smiled back, thinking about how a single act of kindness on a cold November night had changed everything. She had been broken then, torn and shaking and out of options, and he had wrapped his coat around her and asked no questions, offering shelter and safety without demanding anything in return. From that foundation of unconditional care, they had built a love that would last their whole lives, a partnership that would raise 3 children and weather every storm. Rebecca had learned that night that sometimes the best love comes from the simplest acts of human decency, from someone who sees you at your worst and chooses to help anyway. The years continued to roll by. William grew into a fine young man who eventually took over much of the ranch's day-to-day operations, working alongside his father with the easy cooperation of mutual respect. Rose became a teacher, fulfilling her Aunt Sarah's old dream, and brought education to the children of farm families throughout the valley. Samuel, the baby, surprised everyone by developing a passion for veterinary medicine, studying in San Francisco and returning to practice in Stockton, where his gentle manner with animals made him sought after throughout the county. Benjamin and Rebecca watched their children grow and establish their own lives with pride and occasional wistfulness for the noisy chaos of the early years. But they never regretted the quiet that came when it was just the two of them again. They had started their marriage learning each other in that small cabin, and they settled into their later years continuing that process, discovering new facets of each other as they aged. In 1895, William married a local rancher's daughter named Catherine, and the following year they made Benjamin and Rebecca grandparents with the birth of a little girl named Grace. Rebecca held her granddaughter and felt the circle complete, this tiny life representing everything she had fought for, everything Benjamin had helped her build. Grace would grow up knowing only love and safety, never fear or force, and that was a legacy worth more than gold. Thomas Quinn passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1897, with Martha and all his children around him. Benjamin grieved the loss of his father deeply, but he took comfort in knowing that Thomas had lived to see his grandchildren and great-grandchildren, had seen the ranch he built with his own hands continue to prosper under the next generation. Martha lived another 5 years, sharp-minded until the end, and when she finally passed in 1902, she went knowing her family was strong and united. Benjamin and Rebecca were in their 50s now, their hair streaked with gray, their hands weathered by decades of work. But they moved together with the ease of long partnership, finishing each other's thoughts and communicating with glances across rooms. They still sat on the porch most evenings, watching the sun set over the valley, talking about everything and nothing. "Do you remember the first time I tried to rope a fence post?" Rebecca asked one evening, laughing at the memory. "I hit you in the head instead." Benjamin grinned, touching the spot where the rope had caught him. "You gave me a black eye. I told everyone I got kicked by a horse because I was too embarrassed to admit my wife had taken me down with a lasso." "Your wife who you were teaching to use the lasso," Rebecca pointed out. "That was your own fault for standing in the wrong place." "Everything good in my life has been my own fault," Benjamin said, pulling her close, "including falling in love with a stubborn woman who refused to give up no matter how hard life got." Rebecca settled against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. They had been married nearly 25 years now, and she loved him more with each passing day. Not the desperate, grateful love of those early days when she was still learning that she was safe, but the deep, abiding love that came from truly knowing another person and choosing them again and again. Their children brought the grandchildren to visit often, filling the house with noise and laughter again. Benjamin was a patient grandfather, teaching the little ones to ride and rope and care for animals the way he had taught their parents. Rebecca read to them from her ever-growing collection of books, the same books she had once only dreamed of owning. She watched her grandchildren and knew that the cycle of love and safety would continue, that what she and Benjamin had built would echo through generations. In 1905, the town of Stockton threw a party for Benjamin and Rebecca's 27th wedding anniversary. The entire community turned out, testament to the life they had built and the respect they had earned. Judge Carter, now quite elderly but still sharp, gave a speech about the importance of standing up for what was right, about how Benjamin and Rebecca's marriage had shown the community that love and courage could triumph over power and intimidation. Rebecca stood beside her husband, surrounded by their children and grandchildren and friends, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She thought about that terrified girl who had run through the darkness 27 years ago, certain her life was over. She thought about Benjamin finding her by the fence line and making the choice to help without hesitation or condition. She thought about every step of the journey that had brought them here, to this moment of celebration and community. "Thank you," she whispered to Benjamin as they danced together at the party, moving slowly to the music played by local musicians. "For everything. For that first night and every night since. For being the man who saw me at my worst and gave me the space to become my best." Benjamin held her gently, mindful of the bad knee he had developed from years of ranch work. "I did not give you anything you did not already have. I just helped you see it. You saved yourself, Rebecca. I just had the privilege of being there to watch it happen." They danced until the stars came out, surrounded by the life they had built together through love and work and unwavering commitment to each other. When they finally went home that night, exhausted but happy, they lay together in the darkness of their bedroom and talked about the past and the future, about their children's children and the grandchildren yet to come. "I want to see them all settled," Rebecca said. "I want to know they are happy and loved and safe." "They will be," Benjamin assured her. "We gave them the foundation. Now they build their own lives on it the way we built ours." The years moved forward with increasing speed, the way they do when you have lived long enough to know how precious each one is. Benjamin and Rebecca celebrated their 30th anniversary, then their 35th. William and Catherine gave them 3 more grandchildren. Rose married a fellow teacher, and they adopted 2 children whose parents had died. Samuel married late but happily, to a strong-willed woman who worked alongside him in his veterinary practice. By 1910, Benjamin and Rebecca had 8 grandchildren ranging in age from newborn to 14. They were still active on the ranch, though William had long since taken over the day-to-day operations. Benjamin spent his days working with the horses he loved, now training a fourth generation of Quinn children to ride. Rebecca still kept the books, though her eyesight was failing and she increasingly relied on her eldest granddaughter to help with the smaller numbers. They had lived long enough to see automobiles become common on the streets of Stockton, to see the world changing in ways they could never have imagined on that November night in 1878. But some things remained constant: the land, the family, the love that had sustained them through 3 decades of marriage. On a warm evening in June of 1912, 34 years after Benjamin had found Rebecca by the fence line, they sat together on the porch and watched their grandchildren play in the yard. William was inside with Catherine, probably discussing ranch business. Rose and her husband were visiting from Sacramento. Samuel and his wife were expected for dinner. 34 years, Rebecca said softly, taking Benjamin's weathered hand in her own. More than half my life with you. I cannot remember anymore what it felt like to be that girl you found all those years ago. You are still her, Benjamin said gently. Just healed and whole and loved the way you always deserved to be. That is who you were underneath all the fear and pain. That is who you always were. Rebecca leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. They had grown old together, their bodies wearing down from years of work and life, but their hearts remained steady. The love between them had only deepened with time, refined by shared experience and mutual support through every joy and hardship. I would do it all again, Rebecca said. Every hard moment, every scared night, every uncertain day. I would do it all again if it meant ending up here with you. Benjamin kissed the top of her head. So would I. Finding you that night was the best thing that ever happened to me. Marrying you, building this life with you, loving you every single day, that has been my greatest privilege and my greatest joy. They sat together as the sun set once more over the California Valley, painting the sky in the colors they had watched together for more than 3 decades. Their grandchildren's laughter rang out across the yard. Their children were inside the home they had built together. And Benjamin and Rebecca Quinn held hands on the porch, 2 people who had saved each other all those years ago and had never stopped choosing each other since. When dinner was finally ready, and the family gathered around the large table that had hosted countless meals and celebrations, Rebecca looked around at the faces of the people she loved most in the world. These were her people, her family, the legacy of that single moment of kindness and courage on a cold November night. She caught Benjamin's eye across the table, and he smiled at her with the same warmth he had shown her on that first morning when he had made her breakfast and told her everything would be all right. He had been right. Everything had been all right, more than all right. Their life together had been beautiful and full and exactly what both of them needed. From the moment he had wrapped his coat around her shaking shoulders and asked no questions, offering only help and safety, he had shown her what love could be. And in the years since, they had built something lasting from that foundation of unconditional care and respect. As the evening wore on, and the family talked and laughed together, Rebecca felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. This was what she had fought for, what Benjamin had helped her claim. A life of her own choosing, filled with love and dignity and joy. The scared girl who had run through the darkness was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her own strength and worth, who had raised children and helped build a prosperous ranch and earned the respect of her community. But she had never forgotten where she came from, or who had helped her get here. Every day, in 1,000 small ways, she made sure Benjamin knew how grateful she was, how loved he was, how much his choice to help her without asking questions had meant. And Benjamin, in his quiet way, did the same for her, showing her through word and deed that she was cherished and valued and would always be safe with him. As the night drew to a close, and their children and grandchildren prepared to leave, William pulled his parents aside. "You two are an inspiration to all of us," he said seriously. "The way you love each other, the way you have built this family and this ranch together, that is what we all aspire to in our own marriages." "Your father wrapped a coat around a stranger and chose kindness," Rebecca said simply. "Everything else grew from that. Remember that when you face your own difficult choices, the smallest acts of compassion can change everything." After everyone had gone and the house was quiet, Benjamin and Rebecca prepared for bed with the comfortable routine of decades. They lay down together in the darkness, and Benjamin pulled Rebecca close the way he had done every night of their marriage. "I love you, Benjamin Quinn," Rebecca whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible. Thank you for helping me when I was helpless. Thank you for loving me when I thought I was unlovable. Thank you for 34 years of showing me what a good marriage looks like." "I love you, Rebecca Quinn," Benjamin replied. "Thank you for trusting me when you had every reason not to trust anyone. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for being the best partner, the best wife, the best mother, and the best grandmother anyone could ask for. Thank you for every single day." They fell asleep in each other's arms, two people who had found each other in the darkness and had spent the rest of their lives walking together in the light. And in the morning, they woke to another day on the ranch they had built together, surrounded by the family they had created, living the life they had fought so hard to claim. The years that followed were gentle, filled with the quiet joys of a life well lived. Benjamin and Rebecca watched their grandchildren grow and marry and start families of their own. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays and holidays, always together, always surrounded by the love they had cultivated through decades of partnership. When Benjamin finally passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1918 at the age of 65, Rebecca held his hand and told him one last time how much she loved him, how grateful she was for every moment they had shared. He smiled at her, squeezed her hand gently, and closed his eyes for the final time. He was buried on the ranch he had loved, in sight of the cabin where he had first brought Rebecca all those years ago. Rebecca lived another 3 years, spending them surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about their grandfather and the life they had built together. She made sure they all knew the story of how they met, how Benjamin had wrapped his coat around her and asked no questions, how that single act of kindness had changed the course of her entire life. When Rebecca finally passed away quietly in 1921 at the age of 64, she was buried beside Benjamin on the hillside overlooking the valley. Their headstone read simply, "Benjamin and Rebecca Quinn, together in life and love, 1878-1921. Their great-grandchildren would grow up hearing the story of how their great-grandfather had found their great-grandmother shaking and terrified by a fence line, how he had wrapped his coat around her and offered help without asking anything in return, how they had built a love story for the ages from that moment of simple human kindness. The story would be passed down through generations, a reminder that the best love often grows from the simplest acts of compassion, and that choosing kindness in a moment of darkness can change not just one life, but create ripples that echo through time. The ranch remained in the family, passed down through William and eventually to his children and theirs. The cabin where Benjamin and Rebecca had started their life together was preserved, becoming a family landmark and a reminder of where it all began. And on warm summer evenings, generations of Quinns would sit on porches and tell the story of how it all started, with a cowboy who chose kindness and a woman who chose courage, and how together they built something beautiful that would last long after they were gone.